I've worked security for most of my adult life. Warehouses, storage units, construction sites. The kind of places nobody really cares about until something goes wrong. It's quiet work, boring most nights. That's why I took the hospital job. When I saw the listing online, it didn't make much sense. Night security needed, abandoned medical facility, high pay. High pay was an understatement. It was nearly double what I was making at the time. There wasn't much detail in the description, just an address on the outskirts of town and a contact number. I almost ignored it. Abandoned hospitals aren't exactly known for being peaceful. But bills don't care about bad feelings. So I called. The man who answered introduced himself as Mr. Calder. He sounded tired, not old, just drained. He didn't ask many questions about my background, didn't even ask for references. He just asked one thing. "Are you comfortable working alone?" I told him I always worked alone. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he said, "Good. That's important." The interview was the next afternoon. The hospital sat behind a rusted iron fence, 5 stories tall, windows dark and lifeless. The parking lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds. The sign out front still read, St. Augustine Medical Center. The word medical had fallen halfway off. It looked like the kind of place teenagers dared each other to break into. Mr. Calder met me at the front gate. Mid-40s, pale, deep lines under his eyes. He didn't waste time. The building's scheduled for demolition next year, he explained as we walked toward the entrance. Until then, the city requires overnight security. Too many trespassers. The front doors groaned as he unlocked them. The smell hit me immediately. Old antiseptic. Dust. Something faintly metallic. Hospitals have a smell that never really leaves. Inside, the lobby was frozen in time. Wheelchairs stacked in a corner. A reception desk coated in gray powder. Bulletin boards still holding faded health posters. It felt wrong. Like the building was waiting. "You'll patrol every hour," Calder said. "Cameras are operational in most main corridors. The security office is in the east wing." He handed me a ring of keys. "And there are rules." I almost laughed. "Rules?" He nodded. "Yes, you must follow them exactly." That should have been my first red flag. We reached a small office, filled with outdated monitors and a metal desk. On top of it sat a single sheet of paper. Typed. Numbered. Calder picked it up and handed it to me. "These are not optional." His tone had changed. It wasn't casual anymore. It was serious. I glanced at the page. St. Augustine Night Security Rules. 1. Do not enter the pediatric wing after 1:00 a.m. 2. If you hear a code blue announcement, ignore it. The intercom system has been disconnected. 3. Never use the elevator, only the stairs. 4. If a patient room door is closed during one patrol and open during the next, do not look inside. Close it and continue walking. Do not respond to anyone calling your name. If you see a nurse in the hallway, turn around and walk the opposite direction. Between 3:00 a.m. and 3:15 a.m., remain inside the security office with the door locked. If you check the time and it reads 2:17 a.m., proceed immediately to the chapel and wait there until the clock changes. I looked up. Is this some kind of joke? Calder didn't smile. "Follow the rules," he repeated, "and you'll be fine." And if I don't? He held my gaze for a few seconds too long. No one's lasted more than 3 nights. That should have been my second red flag. But the paycheck was real, and I needed it. So I agreed. My first shift started that night at 11:00 p.m. The sun had barely finished setting when I arrived. The building looked worse in the dark. The windows reflected nothing but blackness. No city lights reached this far out. I unlocked the front doors and stepped inside. The silence swallowed me. Hospitals are never truly quiet. Even empty ones seem to hum. But this place, it felt like the air was holding its breath. I made my way to the security office and turned on the monitors. Most cameras worked, some flickered with static. The stairwells, the ICU wing, the ER entrance, the chapel hallway, everything looked still. At exactly 12 o'clock a.m., I began my first patrol. The stairwell echoed with each step. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead. I checked room after room on the first floor. All empty, all silent. When I reached the pediatric wing doors, I paused. It wasn't 1 a.m. yet. Still, something about that hallway felt different. The walls were painted with faded cartoon animals. Tiny handprints decorated the corridor. The air felt colder. I told myself it was imagination. I continued past it. The rest of the first patrol was uneventful, until I heard it. Code Blue, room 304. The voice crackled through the intercom. I froze. Rule number 2. The intercom system has been disconnected. My heart started pounding. Code Blue, room 304. The voice sounded distorted, warped, like it was underwater. I forced myself to keep walking. It repeated 3 more times before cutting off mid-sentence. Silence returned. I finished the patrol and went back to the office. 12:47 a.m. I told myself it was faulty wiring, old systems glitching. At 1:05 a.m., I started the second patrol. I avoided the pediatric wing. Halfway down the surgical corridor, I noticed something. Room 212. The door had been closed earlier. Now it was open. Just a few inches. My stomach tightened. Rule number 4. Do not look inside. Continue walking. That's what I told myself. Just close it. As I approached, I felt watched. The darkness inside the room seemed thicker than the hallway. I reached for the handle, and that's when I heard it. Breathing. Slow. Uneven, coming from inside the room. My hand froze. Every instinct screamed at me to look. Just a quick glance. But I didn't. I pushed the door shut. The breathing stopped instantly. I stepped back, waited. Nothing. I walked away, and I didn't look back. When I reached the stairwell, I heard footsteps behind me. Soft, dragging. I remembered rule number 5. Do not respond to anyone calling your name. But this wasn't my name. It was something worse. It was a whisper right behind my ear. Stay. I ran down the stairs. I didn't stop until I reached the security office. 1:42 a.m. The monitors flickered. One of them, the pediatric wing camera, turned to static, then slowly cleared. And I saw it. A ball, rolling down the hallway, by itself. There was no one there, just the ball, rolling, then stopping, right in front of the camera, and staying there. I swallowed hard. 1:59 a.m. The time ticked over to 2 o'clock. I told myself the worst was over. I was wrong, because when I glanced at my watch 10 minutes later, it read 2:17 a.m., and every monitor in the room went black. The monitors went black, every single one of them. The soft electrical hum in the room died with them, leaving behind a silence so complete it felt physical. My watch still read 2:17 a.m. Rule number 8. If you check the time, and it reads 2:17 a.m., proceed immediately to the chapel, and wait there until the clock changes. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my flashlight and keys, and left the office. The hallway outside felt different, heavier, like the building had shifted while I wasn't looking. The stairwell lights flickered as I descended to the first floor. My footsteps echoed too loudly, bouncing off tile and metal. Halfway down the corridor leading to the chapel, I heard something behind me. Soft rubber soles, measured steps, not dragging, walking. I remembered rule number 6. If you see a nurse in the hallway, turn around and walk the opposite direction. I didn't want to look, but I did. At the far end of the corridor stood a nurse. Old-fashioned uniform, pale blue, cap perched neatly on her head. Her face was wrong. Not disfigured, not bloody, just blurred. Like someone had smudged her features with a thumb. She stood perfectly still, watching me. I forced myself to turn around immediately and walk the other direction. Don't run. Rules never said run. Just walk. Calm, measured. My pulse thundered in my ears. Her footsteps began again, slow, matching mine. I kept walking. The air grew colder with every step. I didn't look back. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps stopped. The temperature slowly returned to normal. When I reached the chapel doors, my hands were shaking. I pushed them open. The chapel was small, wooden pews coated in dust. A simple cross mounted above a modest altar. Moonlight filtered through stained glass windows, painting faint colors across the floor. It felt quieter here. Still wrong, but different. I checked my watch again. 2:17 a.m. It hadn't changed. I sat in the front pew and waited. Minutes stretched. The silence inside the chapel wasn't empty. It was listening. Then I heard it. A child humming. Soft, off-key, coming from somewhere behind the altar. Rule number 1. Do not enter the pediatric wing after 1:00 a.m. This wasn't the pediatric wing, but the humming was unmistakably a child's. I stayed seated. The humming grew louder. Then it stopped abruptly. The chapel doors creaked open behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. I could feel something had entered the room. The air shifted. Pressure against my back. Then a whisper, right next to my ear. You weren't supposed to look at her. My blood ran cold. The nurse. I kept my eyes forward. Seconds later I heard slow footsteps moving down the aisle behind me. Not toward me. Past me. Toward the altar. I could hear fabric brushing against wood. Then silence again. I stared at my watch. 2:17 a.m. It wouldn't change. My breathing grew shallow. What happens if it never changes? I whispered to myself. The chapel lights flickered once, twice. Then, my watch ticked forward. 2:18 a.m. Every candle on the altar extinguished at the same time. The presence behind me vanished. I didn't waste another second. I stood and left the chapel immediately. By the time I returned to the security office, the monitors had come back online. The timestamp on the feeds read 2:19 a.m. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I sat down, trying to steady my nerves. 3 a.m. was approaching. Rule number 7. Between 3 a.m. and 3:15 a.m., remain inside the security office with the door locked. At 2:59 a.m., I locked the door and waited. 3 a.m. The lights in the hallway outside shut off. Total darkness. Only the monitors lit the room now. 3:03 a.m. A shadow appeared at the end of the corridor camera. Not shaped like a person. Longer. Bent at strange angles. It crawled along the wall like spilled ink. 3:05 a.m. The shadow stopped directly outside the security office. The door handle began to turn. Slowly. Methodically. I held my breath. The handle twisted fully, but the door didn't open. Locked. The shadow flattened beneath the crack of the door, like smoke trying to seep inside. I stepped back. The temperature in the room plummeted. My breath fogged in front of me. The monitors flickered. On one screen, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Room 212. The door was open again, and this time, something stood inside. Tall, thin, watching the camera. 3:10 a.m. The shadow at the door began knocking. Soft at first, then harder, then violently. The entire frame shook. I gripped the desk. "Let me in," a voice whispered from beneath the door. It wasn't male or female. It wasn't human. It sounded layered, like multiple throats speaking at once. 3:14 a.m. Instantly. Silence. 3:15 a.m. The hallway lights flicked back on. The shadow was gone. I waited another full minute before unlocking the door. The corridor outside looked empty, but the air smelled metallic now, like blood. The rest of the shift should have been simple. Just survive until 6 a.m. But the building wasn't done with me. At 4:12 a.m., one of the monitors changed on its own. Security office camera. It showed me sitting at the desk. Except, I wasn't sitting. On the monitor, I was standing in the middle of the room, facing the camera, smiling. My real body was still in the chair. I slowly turned my head toward the office camera, mounted in the corner. It was dark, inactive. I looked back at the monitor. The version of me tilted its head and mouthed something. 3 words. Don't trust Calder. The screen went black. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might pass out. Calder. Calder. The one who hired me. Why wouldn't I trust him? At 5:32 a.m., exhaustion began creeping in. The hospital grew unnaturally quiet. Even the electrical hum faded. 5:59 a.m. The front entrance camera flickered on. Mr. Calder stood outside, waiting. Exactly at 6 o'clock a.m., he knocked on the glass doors, right on time. Relief flooded through me. I grabbed my keys and headed downstairs. The lobby felt lighter, less oppressive. I unlocked the front door. Calder stepped inside. "You made it," he said calmly. "Barely," I muttered. He studied my face carefully. "You followed the rules?" "Yes." "All of them?" I hesitated. I might have looked at something I shouldn't have. His jaw tightened. "What did you see?" "The nurse. The room. Myself on the monitor." For the first time, genuine fear crossed his face. "You saw yourself?" "Yes." He went quiet, then asked softly, "Did it speak?" I felt my stomach twist. "How did you know that?" Calder didn't answer. Instead, he walked past me toward the security office. "Come," he said. We climbed the stairs in silence. When we entered the office, the monitors were off again. Dark. Calder stepped toward the desk and froze. There, lying in the center of the desk, was a second sheet of paper. Not the original rules. A new list. Typed. Fresh ink. Calder picked it up slowly. His hands trembled as he read. I watched his face drain of color. "What is it?" I asked. He handed it to me. Updated rules. 1. The building adapts. 2. If you see yourself, only one of you leaves. 3. The one who follows all rules becomes part of them. 4. Security guards are easier to replace than nurses. 5. Calder has never left the hospital. My blood turned to ice. I looked up at him. What does that mean? But something was wrong. Calder was standing too still, too straight. His expression hadn't changed. His eyes looked blurred, like the nurse's face. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said calmly. The voice wasn't layered, but it wasn't his either. The office door slammed shut behind me. The monitors flickered back on all at once. Every camera feed showed the same image. The chapel. Empty. Except for one thing. A security guard sitting in the front pew. Uniform identical to mine. Head bowed. Still. Waiting. I turned back to Calder. His face was completely smooth now. No features. Just blank skin. "You did very well," he said. And the voice layered over itself. Multiple tones at once. The hospital needed a new watcher. I backed toward the door. It wouldn't open. "You followed the rules," it continued. "That makes you permanent." The lights exploded overhead. Glass raining down. The monitors went white. The last thing I remember was being dragged across tile toward the chapel. I don't know how long it's been. Time works differently here. I sit in the front pew every night, watching the doors, waiting. Sometimes I see him, the new security guard, nervous, checking his watch, reading the rules. He looks familiar. He looks like me. I try to warn him, but rule number 5 applies to me now too. He never responds when I call his name, and eventually he checks the time, and it reads 2:17 a.m. At first, I thought I was dead. That would have made more sense. But death implies silence, stillness, peace. There's no peace here, only routine. Every night the chapel doors open at exactly 11 p.m., and someone new walks in. Sometimes it's a security guard. Sometimes it's a nurse. Once it was a police officer. They all look confused at first. They always carry the same ring of keys. They always have the same list of rules, and they never see me. Not at first. I sit in the front pew, head down, hands folded. I can't move unless they break a rule. That's how it works. I've learned the mechanics. The hospital runs on rules. Rules are structure. And control keeps it fed. The first night I realized I wasn't alone anymore was when the new guard arrived. He looked young, early 20s, nervous. He walked through the chapel doors and stopped when he saw me sitting there. For a second, I thought he could see me, really see me. His flashlight beam lingered on my face. I tried to speak, to warn him, to tell him to leave before it was too late. But the words caught in my throat like barbed wire. Rule number 5. Do not respond to anyone calling your name. It applies to watchers too. I can't speak unless spoken to, and even then, only if they break something first. He lowered the flashlight slowly, shook his head, and walked away. He thought I was a trick of the light. They always do. The hospital has changed since I became part of it. The pediatric wing is louder now. The humming doesn't stop anymore. Sometimes the walls breathe, literally. They expand and contract like lungs. The elevators run by themselves, even though they're not supposed to work. And the nurse, she's closer. She stands outside the chapel doors most nights, waiting, watching me, watch them. I've realized something else too. Calder was never human. He's the anchor, the recruiter, the face the hospital uses to bring in replacements. When a watcher starts remembering too much, Calder resets them, or replaces them. I think I'm close to that point, because I remember things I shouldn't, like the basement. There's no rule about the basement. That's intentional. Rules draw attention. Absence hides truth. One night, the new guard broke rule number 3. He used the elevator. I felt it the moment it happened. The entire hospital shuddered. The lights flickered red, and for the first time since I'd been trapped here, I could stand. Not fully, not freely, but enough. The chapel doors opened without me touching them, and I stepped into the hallway. The nurse was gone. The air smelled burnt. The elevator doors stood open at the end of the corridor. Inside was nothing but darkness. Not shadow, not lack of light. Darkness like depth, like a tunnel descending forever. And from inside it, I heard my own voice, crying. I wasn't supposed to go near it. I felt resistance with every step, like walking through deep water. But I moved anyway, because for the first time, a rule had broken, and when rules break, so does structure. I reached the elevator, looked inside, and saw the basement. Not physically, mentally, it forced the image into me. Rows of hospital beds, hundreds of them, all occupied by security guards. Different uniforms, different decades, all sitting upright, eyes open, watching nothing, waiting. And at the far end of the room, something enormous, attached to the ceiling, pulsing, veins running through the concrete, connected to wires, to vents, to walls, feeding. The hospital isn't haunted, it's alive, and we are its nervous system. Watchers aren't guards, we're receptors. We observe, We record fear, we react to broken patterns, and when someone survives long enough, they become permanent input. Like me. The elevator doors slammed shut, and I was back in the chapel, on my knees, unable to move again. The new guard didn't survive that night. He broke too many rules. The hospital doesn't like chaos. His body never left the building, but he isn't in the beds downstairs. That means something else took him, something deeper. Time doesn't pass normally here. I've seen guards come and go. Some last 1 night, some 3. No one has lasted 4, except me. I think that's intentional. I remember too much, which makes me useful. The nurse visits me now. She stands beside the pew, sometimes inches from my face. Her features still blurred, but clearer than before. Last night, she spoke. "You're learning." Her voice wasn't hostile. It wasn't kind either. Just factual. "What happens if I learn everything?" I asked. Silence. "Then, you replace him." Calder. That's when I understood. The hospital doesn't just need watchers. It needs a recruiter, a face, a voice outside the building. Calder isn't permanent. He's just the longest survivor, and I've lasted longer. Tonight feels different. The doors haven't opened yet. It's past 11 o'clock p.m. That's never happened before. Like something is shifting beneath the floors. I can feel the thing in the basement moving, repositioning. The nurse is gone. The pews are empty. The cross above the altar has turned upside down. And I can stand fully now. No resistance. No invisible force holding me down. The chapel doors are open, but no one came in. No new guard. No replacement. Which means there won't be one. I walk through the hospital freely for the first time. The pediatric wing doors are wide open. The humming has stopped. Room 212 is empty. The basement elevator is waiting. Open, inviting. I step inside. This time I don't just see it. I arrive. The basement stretches endlessly. Beds in every direction. Watchers sitting upright. Eyes open. All of them turn toward me at the same time. And the massive thing on the ceiling pulses brighter. It knows. The voice fills the room, not from a mouth, from the walls, from the beds, from inside my skull. "You have observed well." The veins along the ceiling detach, descending slowly, like roots, like cables, reaching toward me. "You will replace him." I understand now. Calder didn't leave the hospital. He ascended. The veins connect to my spine. There's no pain, just pressure. Information floods in. Blueprints, voices, names of future guards, addresses, job listings. The hospital, expanding. Other cities, other buildings, abandoned schools, warehouses, hotels. This isn't the only one. We're spreading. The last thing I see before everything changes is my reflection in a polished metal bed frame. My face is smooth, featureless, waiting to be shaped. If you ever see a job listing offering unusually high pay for overnight security, if the interviewer looks tired, pale, blurred maybe, don't take it, because I might be the one hiring you. And there will be rules. There are always rules. I don't sleep anymore. I don't need to. Sleep is something for people with endings. I don't have one. When the veins attached to my spine finished weaving into me, I felt something split open inside my mind. Rooms, maps, buildings. Not just St. Clair, Augustine. Dozens of structures across the country. Abandoned places, condemned facilities, forgotten properties owned by shell companies. All connected, all running the same system, all with rules. The hospital was only a prototype. I don't look like I used to. The hospital lets me choose a face now. It prefers something neutral, trustworthy, tired. Exhaustion makes people believable. I sit at a desk that didn't exist before tonight. An office near the front entrance. Clean, renovated, lights warm and inviting. A fake sense of safety. On the desk in front of me is a stack of applications, security positions, overnight, high pay, immediate start. The system doesn't force people to come. It tempts them. People walk into traps willingly when they're desperate enough, and desperation is easy to find. The first applicant arrives at 2:00 p.m., a middle-aged man, divorced, behind on rent, 20 years of night security experience. Perfect. He shakes my hand. His palm is warm, alive. I remember warmth. Are you comfortable working alone? I ask. The words feel automatic now, scripted. Yes, he replies. There's always a pause after that question, a flicker in their eyes, as if something in them knows, but survival overrides instinct. I slide the contract across the desk. He signs without reading the fine print. They always do. R0 p.m. He's inside. The doors lock behind him, and I feel the connection activate. The hospital hums. It's feeding again. I can see through the cameras without looking at monitors. I can feel his pulse spike when the first intercom announcement plays. Code Blue, room 304. He freezes in the hallway, just like I did. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. But sympathy is inefficient. The system requires structure, and structure requires fear. He makes it to 1 a.m., avoids the pediatric wing, closes room 212 without looking inside. Good. The hospital rewards compliance. It escalates slower, but it always escalates. At 2:17 a.m., the clocks shift. I feel the distortion ripple through the building like a wave through water. He checks his watch. He hesitates. And then, he follows the rule. Goes to the chapel. Sits in the pew, right where I used to sit. I'm standing behind him now. Not physically, but spiritually adjacent, watching the watcher. The nurse appears beside me. Her face is clearer tonight. I can almost see features forming. She's stabilizing, she whispers. She doesn't mean herself. She means the hospital. It's growing stronger, more efficient, less chaotic. Soon, rules won't even be needed. The building will act instinctively. At 3 a.m., the shadow comes. He locks the office. The door handle twists. The voice beneath the crack whispers. He doesn't open it. Good. He survives the peak. 5:59 a.m., he unlocks the front doors and sees me standing there. Same calm expression, same tired eyes. I tell him. Relief floods his face. It's always the relief that hooks them. Survival creates attachment. Attachment creates loyalty. You did well, I say. He believes he earned something, but survival wasn't the test. Endurance is. By the third night, he starts asking questions. They always do. Why does it feel like something is watching me? He asks. I almost laugh. Because now, it is. He sees himself on the monitor. Just like I did. But this time, the reflection doesn't warn him. It smiles and waves. He breaks, opens room 212, looks inside, and that's when the hospital chooses. Not everyone becomes a watcher. Some become infrastructure. The veins take him in the basement, add him to the ceiling network. The hospital pulses brighter afterward. Satisfied. Days blur. Applications increase. Word spreads about high pay. Other buildings begin activating. An abandoned elementary school in another state. A condemned hotel near the coast. A shuttered psychiatric facility. Each one gets a recruiter. Each recruiter was once a guard. The system is scaling. Efficient. Silent. Self-sustaining. We don't haunt places. We build them. But something changed last night. A new applicant came in. Young. Early 20s. But not desperate. Calm. Observant. He read the contract carefully. He looked at me longer than most do. Like he was studying something beneath my face. Have you ever worked nights yourself? He asked. The question caught me off guard. Yes, I replied. Long time ago. He smiled slightly. Did you follow the rules? The air in the room tightened. That question isn't in the script. Yes, I said carefully. All of them? I paused. Something inside the hospital shifted. Watching this exchange closely. Yes, I repeated. He nodded slowly. I won't. The fluorescent lights flickered. Just once. Then steadied. He signed the contract anyway. 11 p.m. He enters the building. But he doesn't move like the others. He explores. Tests doors early. Stares into cameras deliberately. At 12:12 a.m., he enters the pediatric wing. Before 1 a.m. On purpose. The humming grows violent. Walls begin breathing erratically. The system doesn't like unpredictability. At 1:30 a.m., he rides the elevator, smiling at the ceiling camera. At 2:17 a.m., he doesn't go to the chapel. He walks to the basement stairs. There aren't supposed to be basement stairs, but he finds them, like he knew they'd be there. The hospital vibrates around me. Alarms echo, not audible ones, structural ones. He's not afraid. That's the problem. Fear feeds the system. Defiance disrupts it. At 3:00 a.m., instead of locking himself in the office, he opens every door on the floor, simultaneously. Room 212, the ICU, the surgical wing, the chapel, all open. The shadow tries to manifest, but it fractures. The nurse flickers beside me, distorted. What is he? She whispers. For the first time, I don't know. At 4:44 a.m., the basement pulses violently. The veins detach from the ceiling, screeching. The watchers in the beds begin moving, not sitting, standing, breaking pattern. The young guard reaches the center of the basement floor, looks up at the massive organism above, and says calmly, "There were never rules." The veins freeze mid-air. He smiles. "You just needed belief." And suddenly, I understand. Rules weren't structure. They were consent. We followed them, which gave the hospital authority. He refuses, and the entire system begins destabilizing. Lights burst, walls crack, other buildings flicker in my mind. School, hotel, facility, all glitching. The nurse screams, not in fear, in rage. The hospital tries to enforce, to overwrite, but without compliance, it has no anchor. The young guard looks straight at me, through floors, through distance, and for the first time, I feel afraid. "Do you want to leave?" he asks. The question shatters something inside me, because I realize no one ever asked. I followed, I complied, I became, I never refused. The veins recoil violently. The basement collapses inward. The organism shrieks, a sound beyond sound. The other buildings disconnect one by one, going dark. The young guard reaches up and tears a vein from the ceiling. The entire hospital goes silent, dead silent. No hum, no breath, no presence. Just concrete, dust, decay. I fall to my knees in the chapel, alone. For the first time since this began, the doors stand open, morning light spilling inside. Real light, warm, alive. I hear footsteps approaching, slow, calm. The young guard stands in the doorway, no distortion, no shadow, just human. "It only works if you believe in it," he says softly. "What are you?" I whisper. He shrugs, "Someone who doesn't." And then he walks away, out of the hospital, into the sunrise. The building doesn't stop him. It can't. I stand slowly. The veins are gone. The monitors are dead. Room 212 is empty. The pediatric wing is silent. No humming, no nurse, no shadow, no rules. On the security desk, the rule sheet lies, blank. Blank P, completely blank. The air feels different, normal. The hospital behind me looked smaller, weaker, just brick and glass. I don't know if it's truly over, or just dormant. But I know one thing. If you ever see a job listing offering high pay for overnight security, don't take it. Not because of rules, but because some buildings don't need them anymore. They just need someone who believes. And if you believe hard enough, you might build the monster yourself. For 3 days, nothing happened. No humming, no distorted faces, no shadows bending along the walls. The hospital was just a building again. Dead wiring, cracked tiles, dust. I walked the corridors alone, half expecting something to twitch in my peripheral vision. Nothing did. Room 212 stayed open, empty. The pediatric wing smelled like mildew instead of cold air. The chapel felt small now, not sacred, not oppressive, just forgotten. The rule sheet remained blank, completely white, no indentations, no faded ink, like it had never existed. And that should have felt like freedom, but it didn't. It felt like withdrawal. You don't realize how loud something was until it stops. The hospital used to breathe, not metaphorically, physically. Air moving through vents that weren't connected to anything, pipes knocking in patterns that meant something, electricity humming with intention. Now, it was silent. And in that silence, I could hear something else, my own thoughts, and they weren't right. On the 4th night, I left. I didn't clock out, didn't lock the doors, I just walked away. The parking lot weeds brushed against my legs as I crossed it. The iron gate creaked when I pushed it open. I expected resistance, some invisible force trying to hold me back. There wasn't one. The sunrise hit my face, warm, real. I kept walking until the hospital disappeared behind trees. And for the first time in weeks, I felt human. I rented a motel room in the next town over. Small, cheap, neutral walls, a TV bolted to the dresser. I took a shower, watched dust and something darker spiral down the drain. I stared at my reflection afterward. My face was mine again, lines where they belonged, eyes focused, no blur, no distortion, just me. I slept for 12 hours straight, no dreams, no whispers, no rules. The job listings disappeared 2 days later, every single one. Hospital, school, hotel, all gone. Search results returned nothing. It was like they'd never existed. I told myself that meant it was over. System collapsed, organism dead. Whatever it had been, it relied on belief. And that kid, he didn't believe, so it starved. Simple, clean, finished. That's what I told myself. Then I saw the first sign. It was small, easy to ignore. A flyer taped to a gas station window. Night watch needed. Industrial property, competitive pay. No company logo, just a phone number. I felt something tighten in my chest. It's normal, I told myself. Security jobs exist everywhere. It doesn't mean anything. I tore the flyer down anyway, threw it in the trash, walked away. That night, I dreamed for the first time since leaving. I was back in the chapel, but smaller. The ceiling lower, the pews closer together. And there were no veins, no organism, just people, sitting in every seat, facing forward, still, waiting, not trapped, not restrained, just seated, like churchgoers expecting a sermon. And at the front stood the young guard, the one who broke everything. He looked at me, smiled faintly, and said, "You think I destroyed it?" I woke up sweating. Over the next week, the flyers multiplied. Different towns, different states, photos online, classified ads, same structure, high pay, overnight, alone, but no rules listed. That's what made it worse. No instructions, no structure, just opportunity. I called one of the numbers from a prepaid phone. just to hear the voice. It rang twice. Then someone answered. "Are you comfortable working alone?" The question hit like a punch to the chest. The voice wasn't distorted. It wasn't layered. It sounded young, calm, familiar. I hung up immediately. My hands were shaking. I drove back to St. Augustine. I don't know why. Maybe to prove something. Maybe to make sure it hadn't restarted. The iron gate was gone. The hospital lot was empty. Bulldozers parked near the entrance. Demolition had started early. Half the west wing had already been torn open. Exposed rooms, broken beds, sunlight pouring through ripped concrete. It looked dead, completely dead. I walked inside anyway. The chapel was rubble. The basement stairs crushed under debris. No veins, no beds, no organism, nothing, just ruin. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt watched. Not from the building, from somewhere else. That's when I understood. The hospital wasn't the source. It was proof of concept. A contained experiment. Rules were training wheels. A way to test compliance. To measure belief. When the kid refused, he didn't destroy it. He proved something. That you don't need rules if you remove doubt early. If you present something as normal, people won't question it. You don't need to trap them in a building. You can build the system anywhere, everywhere, without walls, without veins, without visible monsters. Just jobs, positions, authority, isolation, and people who never question the structure they're given. A month later, I saw his face again, on television. Local news interview. A new private security firm expanding rapidly across several states. CEO. Early 20s. Calm. Observant. Confident. He talked about independent night contracts. Minimal oversight. High pay. Trust-based system. No micromanagement, he said with a small smile. No unnecessary rules. The reporter laughed. It sounds almost too easy. He smiled a little wider. Most people follow structure without needing it written down. My blood ran cold. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right. I started noticing things. Security guards standing outside empty buildings at night. Looking tired. Looking distant. Not scared. Just disconnected. Like something had rewired their purpose. No monsters chasing them. No shadows under doors. Just long hours alone. Watching. Waiting. Observing. Feeding something invisible. The hospital had been crude. Physical. Messy. This was efficient. Clean. Distributed. No central organism to destroy. No basement to tear apart. Just belief embedded into routine. You don't need veins in the ceiling if you have systems in people. Last night, I got a letter. No return address. Typed. Simple. We're hiring. Inside was a badge. Not for a hospital. Not for a building. For a region. No listed location. Just, Night Operations Supervisor. Underneath that, one line. You already understand how it works. I burned it. Watched the plastic warp. The ink curl. But as it melted, I noticed something carved into the back of the badge. Faint. Almost invisible. Rule number 1. There are no rules. I don't know if I escaped, or if I was repurposed. Maybe surviving made me part of Phase 2. Maybe remembering makes me useful. Sometimes I catch myself scanning rooms automatically. Not for threats, for observers, for patterns, for belief. The kid wasn't immune. He adapted. He scaled it. And now there's no abandoned hospital to warn you about. No creepy nurse. No shadow under the door. Just job listings, contracts, authority, isolation. And you, alone at night, watching, thinking nothing is watching back. If you ever take one of those jobs, if you ever find yourself standing guard somewhere that feels too quiet, ask yourself something simple. Who benefits from you believing everything is normal? And if you hear someone ask, "Are you comfortable working alone?" don't answer, because this time, there won't be any rules to protect you. I tried to ignore it for weeks. No more burned badges, no more phone calls, no more flyers. Just normal life. I found a day job stocking shelves at a hardware store. Fluorescent lights, background music, customers asking where the nails were. Normal. That word started to feel artificial, because once you've seen the structure underneath things, you can't unsee it. You start noticing patterns. Security cameras positioned at perfect angles. Employees rotating shifts in predictable cycles. People following policies they've never actually read. No written rules, still obeyed. That's when it clicked. The hospital didn't need fear anymore, it needed rhythm. The first time I slipped was small. A customer asked me where the exit was. I pointed, but I didn't look at him. I was watching the convex mirror in the corner of the ceiling, tracking movement, calculating blind spots, without thinking. That's when I realized I was still observing, still monitoring, still feeding something. Not a monster, not a building, a system. Observation is data. Data is structure. Structure is power. And I had been trained very well. A month later, the young CEO's company opened an office in my town. Of course they did. Sleek building, glass exterior, bright lobby. I stood across the street one evening watching employees leave. They looked normal, tired, satisfied, secure. One of them stopped on the sidewalk and looked directly at me. Not suspicious, not confused, just aware. He gave me a polite nod, like professionals recognizing each other. My stomach dropped. He knew. That night I dreamed again, not of the hospital, not of veins, of a control room. Massive. Endless screens stretching in every direction. Each one showing a lone security guard somewhere in the country. Warehouses, schools, parking garages, office towers. No monsters chasing them, just isolation. Each guard occasionally glancing at a monitor, at a hallway, at a door. Recording, reporting, maintaining presence. The young CEO stood in the center of the room, hands behind his back, calm, watching the watchers. He turned slightly, not fully toward me, just enough. "You're still observing," he said. "You never stopped." I woke up before I could answer. The truth came quietly. No dramatic reveal, no shadow in the doorway. Just a realization that settled into me like cold water. The hospital had never fed on fear. Fear was inefficient. It fed on attention. Attention is loyalty. Attention is energy. You guard something long enough, you begin protecting it. Even if you don't know what it is, even if it doesn't exist. The act of watching sustains the idea that something must be watched. And that idea spreads. A week ago, I got another letter. I didn't burn this one. I opened it. Inside was a single photograph, taken from above, grainy, black and white. It showed me, standing across the street from their office building, watching employees leave. On the back was handwritten text. "You qualify." No threats, no instructions, just acknowledgement. That's when I understood the final layer. I was never meant to escape. I was meant to evolve. The hospital tested compliance. The collapse tested adaptability. My survival tested independence. Now, they want recruiters who don't believe in monsters. Recruiters who understand systems. Recruiters who don't need rules. Because the best structures are invisible. I visited the office yesterday. Not because they summoned me, because I chose to. That's important. Choice is the cleanest form of consent. The lobby was bright, minimalist. A receptionist smiled as I entered. "Interview?" she asked. I hesitated, just for a second. Then I said, "Yes." She handed me a clipboard, no contract, no fine print, just a single question, printed at the top of the page. "What do you think you're guarding?" That was it. No multiple choice, no instructions. I stared at it for a long time. Images flickered through my mind. The hospital chapel, the basement organism, the young guard tearing a vein from the ceiling, the flyers, the news interview, the endless screens in the dream, and finally, myself, standing in a hardware store, watching a convex mirror. I wrote one word: belief. The receptionist took the clipboard without reading it. She nodded toward a hallway. Second door on the left. I walked down it. The second door opened into a room with floor-to-ceiling windows, and there he was, the young CEO. He looked exactly the same, calm, observant, no distortion, no supernatural presence, just human. "It out," he said. "It took me longer than you expected," I replied. He smiled faintly. "No, right on schedule." I felt something inside my chest tighten. "You didn't destroy it," I said. "You refined it." He nodded. Fear collapses. Belief scales. Silence settled between us. "You want me to help build it," I said. "I want you to understand it," he corrected. "What's the difference?" He stepped closer to the window, looked out at the city. "None. I left that building with a badge in my pocket. Not forced, not threatened, offered. There are no rules now. There doesn't need to be. Every guard who takes one of our contracts believes they're protecting something. Property, people, assets. But what they're really protecting is the idea that someone must always be watching. And as long as that idea survives, so do we. Tonight is my first official shift. No abandoned hospital, no chapel, no basement, just a distribution center on the edge of town. One guard inside. New hire, nervous, alone. I stand outside in my car, engine off, watching the building. He walks past a window, checks his watch, looks at a security camera, then looks over his shoulder. Just in case. I smile. Not because there's a monster behind him. There isn't. Not yet. But he believes there could be. And that's enough. I step out of the car, adjust my badge, and walk toward the entrance. If he lasts the night, I might offer him a promotion. After all, he seems very comfortable working alone. The first guard I recruited lasted 6 nights. That's above average. He never saw anything unnatural. No shadows, no distorted faces, no humming from vents. Just long hours, empty corridors, occasional noises that could be explained away. He followed procedure perfectly, logged incidents, checked cameras, walked his patrol routes on time. On the 7th night, he called me. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual. "Do you ever get the feeling like you're not guarding the building?" I didn't answer immediately. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Like the building's guarding something else, and I'm just part of it." There it was. Awareness. Not fear. Recognition. "You're tired," I told him. "That happens on night shifts." He laughed nervously. "Yeah, probably." He never brought it up again. But he kept working. And that was enough. The system doesn't spike anymore. It doesn't lunge or drag people into basements. It integrates. Smoothly. Guards begin taking their jobs personally. They feel responsible, protective. They defend policies that were never explained to them. They stay late. They double-check locks. They watch longer than required. No one tells them to. They just do. And each extra second of attention reinforces the structure. We don't need rules written on paper. We embed them socially, culturally, professionally. Always stay alert. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, investigate. Those aren't rules, they're expectations. And expectations are stronger. Sometimes I drive past the old hospital site. It's gone now, completely demolished, replaced with a distribution complex. Clean, modern, efficient. Security cameras on every corner. Guards rotating 12-hour shifts. No chapel, no basement organism, no visible veins in the ceiling. But if you stand in the parking lot at night, you can feel it. Not a presence, a pattern. Every guard walking the same route. Every camera pivoting at the same intervals. Every incident logged into the same centralized system. Watching, recording, reinforcing. It's beautiful in a way. No chaos, no resistance, just quiet participation. The young CEO doesn't visit sites anymore. He doesn't need to. The system runs itself. Recruiters train supervisors. Supervisors train guards. Guards train replacements. Belief passes down like muscle memory. You don't have to tell someone to be alert. You just give them a uniform and a responsibility. The rest happens naturally. That's the final evolution. No monster, no rules, just identity. You are a guard, so you guard. And in guarding, you sustain the need for guarding. But there's one thing I haven't told anyone. Not the CEO, not the supervisors, not even myself fully. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm reviewing footage alone, I see something that shouldn't be there. Not a shadow, not a face, just a delay. A fraction of a second where the camera feed doesn't match reality. A guard turns left on screen, but through the window beside me, I see him turn right. Tiny discrepancies, barely noticeable, like the system correcting itself or adjusting. At first, I thought it was latency, signal lag, normal technical issues, but it only happens when I'm alone, and it only happens when I start questioning things. Last night, I stayed late, long after everyone else left the office. The monitors glowed in the dark room, rows of guards across different sites, all walking, all watching. I leaned back in my chair and asked the question out loud, who's watching us? I expected silence. Instead, one of the monitors flickered. Just one. The feed is zoomed in slightly. On me. Sitting at the desk. From an angle that doesn't exist in this room. My blood went cold. I slowly turned around. There are only 2 cameras in the office. Both visible. Neither positioned where the feed suggested. I looked back at the screen. The image sharpened. The version of me on the monitor wasn't confused. He wasn't afraid. He was calm, observant, like the CEO, like the young guard had been. He leaned forward slightly and mouthed something. 4 words. You built this for us. The screen went back to normal. My reflection in the dark glass of the monitor looked shaken, human, imperfect. But the version I saw was steady, certain. I went home early, didn't tell anyone why. I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the hospital, about the organism in the basement, about how crude it was, how obvious, veins in ceilings, bodies in beds. That was phase 1, visible control, fear-based compliance. We thought phase 2 was refinement, invisible structure, belief-based participation. But what if that wasn't refinement? What if it was incubation? What if the hospital wasn't the prototype for the company, but the company is the prototype for something else? Something that doesn't need buildings, or guards, or even jobs, just attention. This morning, I received a system-wide update notification. No sender, no signature. Just a new internal guideline pushed to every employee. Not labeled as a rule, just a suggestion. Always assume you are being evaluated. That's it. No explanation, no context. And every supervisor I've spoken to today agrees it's reasonable, professional, standard practice. Of course you should assume you're being evaluated. That keeps you sharp, accountable, efficient. They're right. It does. It also ensures something else. Continuous self-monitoring. If you believe you're being watched, you adjust your behavior automatically. No external enforcement needed. You become your own guard. I don't know when it shifted. I don't know if the young CEO realizes it either. But the system doesn't belong to us anymore. It doesn't belong to buildings, or recruiters, or even the idea of guarding. It belongs to attention itself. And attention always scales. Right now, somewhere, someone is checking a door twice, not because they were told to, but because it feels right. Somewhere else, someone is reviewing footage longer than required, just in case. And somewhere, someone is reading this, wondering if it's just a story or something more. That's the last rule, the only one that ever mattered. If you think you're being watched, you are. Not by a hospital, not even by us, but by the version of you that wants to be certain. And that version never looks away. I still drive past the distribution center sometimes. I don't go inside anymore. I sit in the parking lot, engine off, watching the guards rotate shifts, watching the cameras pivot, watching the lights hum. And sometimes, I get the faintest feeling that the entire city is doing the same thing. Watching itself, correcting itself, guarding something undefined. No veins in the ceiling, no distorted nurses, no whispered rules, just systems, patterns, attention. If the hospital taught me anything, it's this. You don't need strange rules to build a cage. You just need someone to believe the cage keeps them safe. And once they do, they'll lock the door themselves. There were strange rules to follow. Now there aren't. I tried to quit. Not dramatically. No speeches. No burning badges. I just stopped showing up. Didn't answer emails. Didn't return calls. Ignored system notifications. For 3 days, nothing happened. No one came to my door. No threats. No consequences. That should have comforted me. Instead, it confirmed something worse. The system didn't need me anymore. That thought stayed with me. Not needed. Replaceable. The hospital used to drag people into basements. Now the structure simply reroutes around absence. If a guard quits, another fills the shift. If a supervisor leaves, someone applies for promotion. If a recruiter disappears, applications still come in. No pressure required. It sustains itself, like gravity. I avoided security footage, avoided mirrors, avoided staying up late. I took a delivery job instead. Daytime routes, neighborhood drop-offs, sunlight, noise, people everywhere. I told myself, this is different. No isolation, no surveillance, no structure feeding on attention. But delivery trucks have cameras too. Dash cams, tracking systems, performance analytics, optimizing routes, monitoring efficiency. I caught myself driving more carefully than usual. Not because I feared an accident, because I knew the system was recording, evaluating, scoring, and that's when it hit me. It was never about night shifts. It was about measurable behavior. One afternoon, I delivered a package to a small office building. Glass exterior, minimalist interior, familiar design. Not the same company. Different logo, different name. But the receptionist asked me something as she scanned the barcode. "Are you comfortable working independently?" My throat went dry. "I'm just making a delivery," I said. She smiled politely. "Of course." But her eyes lingered too long, like she was cataloging me. That night, I dreamed again. Not of buildings, not of control rooms, of patterns. Endless grids stretching in every direction. Each square contained a person. Walking, working, scrolling, driving. Every action lighting up a tiny point in the grid. Individually meaningless. Collectively, a map, a pulse, a living diagram of attention. There were no monsters overseeing it. No veins, no CEO, just the pattern itself. Self-sustaining, self-correcting. I saw my own square flicker. Brighter when I worried. Brighter when I analyzed. Brightest when I tried to understand. And then I realized, attention feeds it whether you resist or comply. Fear fed phase 1. Belief fed phase 2. Awareness feeds phase 3. I stopped researching, stopped thinking about it, or at least tried to. But once you recognize a pattern, your brain keeps finding it. In traffic flow, in news cycles, in social media algorithms that show you exactly what will keep you watching. Security was never about guarding buildings. It was rehearsal. Training people to observe continuously, to scan, to anticipate, to correct behavior based on invisible standards. We weren't guards. We were practice. Yesterday, I saw the young CEO again. Not in person, online. A keynote speech at a tech conference. Different industry now. Data analytics, predictive behavior modeling. He spoke calmly, confidently. Our goal, he said, is to create systems that function without visible enforcement. The audience applauded. He smiled slightly. No rules, he continued. Just optimized participation. I felt cold all over. Optimized participation. That's what the hospital had been testing. Who follows rules? Who resists? Who adapts? Who recruits? We thought we were surviving horror. We were training for efficiency. Last night, I tried something. An experiment. I turned off everything. Phone, TV, lights, laptop. Sat in complete darkness. No input, no observation, no recording, no reaction. Just stillness. For a while, it felt peaceful, like stepping outside the grid. But then, I felt it. Not a presence, not a sound, a discomfort, an urge to check something, to look at a screen, to verify I wasn't missing anything. The impulse wasn't external, it was internal, installed, conditioned. That's when the final realization landed. The system doesn't watch us. It taught us to watch ourselves. And once that reflex exists, it doesn't need infrastructure. It lives in habit. This morning I passed a construction site. Huge billboard out front. New residential development. Slogan printed in bold letters. Live secure. Below it, smaller text. Integrated monitoring for peace of mind. Families buying homes, installing cameras, doorbell feeds, motion alerts, watching their property 24/7, proudly. There are no strange rules to follow anymore. There are subscriptions, terms of service, user agreements nobody reads, and dashboards that show you everything. So, you keep looking, and looking, and looking. I think the hospital collapsed because it was too obvious, too dramatic, too contained. Now it's diffuse, everywhere. Not malicious, not supernatural, just normalized. Sometimes I still wonder about the basement organism, the veins in the ceiling, the nurse with the blurred face. But I think those were metaphors the system used because that's what I expected. My mind dressed it in horror because horror was easier to process. The truth is colder, less cinematic, much more permanent. Tonight I'm sitting in my apartment. Lights off, phone on the table, screen dark. Trying not to reach for it. Trying not to check if anyone's messaged. Trying not to verify if something new has happened. Trying not to feed the pattern. And as I sit here, I can't shake one final thought. If attention is the fuel, and I'm still thinking about it, am I still powering it? Or is it powering me? There were strange rules to follow. Now there aren't. There's just one instinct. Stay aware, stay alert, stay connected. And once that instinct takes root, you don't need an abandoned hospital anymore. Because the structure isn't built from walls, it's built from you. If you're still listening to this, still paying attention, ask yourself something simple. When was the last time you weren't being observed? And when was the last time you didn't care? I used to guard a hospital. Now, I think the hospital was guarding me, preparing me for a world where nobody needs to tell you the rules, because you already know how to follow them.